Hey everyone, Chris here. So I wasn't going to release another video this week as I'm still catching up on video content, but there was some very big news that came out. This is from the D&D Playtest survey results, Player's Handbook Unearthed Arcana video released by the D&D team. Rather than do a reaction video, I decided I would summarize the information we were given and give some thoughts. This shouldn't be too long a video. So first, Playtest 8 was apparently a huge success in regards to survey scores. With the surveys, their goal is to get over 70% satisfaction rate, though they view scores in the 70s as going in the right direction, but there's still work to be done. When something scores in the 80s, they consider that very close to the mark, but they still might refine some things, but they don't want to change too much. And if something's in the 90s, that means it's pretty much a bullseye. The Druid, including Circle of the Moon's new features and the revised Wild Shape, scored over 70%, and Jeremy Crawford specifies in the video that they view this as the floor of satisfied territory, and that they are glad to finally be in that territory, but they're going to continue to work on these things before publication. The Barbarians revised and new features, including the Path of the Wild Tree subclass, and the new Brutal Strike mechanics scored over 80%. Apparently most of the revised features of the Monk scored over 90%, and some features were approaching 100%. Jeremy Crawford points out that it's very rare for anything in Unearthed Arcana to score in the 90s. The revised healing spells, such as the Enhanced Cure Wounds spell, all scored in the 80s for satisfaction. The completely reimagined conjuration spells, which we are reminded are highly experimental, all scored in the high 70s or in the 80s. Jeremy Crawford reiterated that if you want to summon a creature with a stat block, all the summoning spells from Tasha's will be appearing in the new Player's Handbook. So it sounds like the new direction they're taking with these spells is a go, but there's still some work for refinement and polish. I was worried about this one, so this one's a big relief to me. But notice this video is not titled Playtest 8 Survey Results. It's just titled Playtest Survey Results for the Player's Handbook. And yes, this is it for public playtests for the Player's Handbook. There will not be a Playtest 9 for the Player's Handbook after all. Now he is really clear that the end of the public playtest process is not the end of the development process. He teased that the Player's Handbook is going to feature some new spells we never saw in Unearthed Arcana, as well as some other features. And this graphic right here that was posted and quickly taken down online that announced a May 21st release date for the new core books, Jeremy Crawford has confirmed this is definitely not going to be the release date. And quote, "We will still be working on the books in May." He did say they are currently working on all 3 core books together, but he didn't say whether they would all be released at the same time or staggered, but it's not going to be in May. Apparently, there has been online speculation that this image was going to be the cover of the new Player's Handbook, and it is definitely not going to be the cover. It's going to be part of the fighter section in the Player's Handbook, and the cover art has not been publicly released yet. And in regards to Unearthed Arcana for the Dungeon Master's Guide and for the Monster Manual, he said that they had talked about publicly releasing a playtest for the new encounter building system, but said they've decided to focus on internal playtesting instead for the time being, meaning we may or may not see any more Unearthed Arcana for the core books. But if there's going to be a public playtest for encounter building at all, it's not going to be right away. He did promise that based on internal playtesting, the encounter building system in the Dungeon Master's Guide will be far more streamlined. He says, you'll have a budget for monsters at a given difficulty, you'll spend that budget, and you'll be done. So it sounds like the current system of additional creatures being more valued than the original and all that, which we know doesn't work, that's going to be gone. Now I'll tell you right now, whatever ends up being the new encounter system, it's just never going to be like Pathfinder, where you plug in the numbers and it spits out a fairly accurate difficulty regardless of the table. D&D is way too dynamic a game to ever have that kind of encounter system. Challenge ratings, encounter difficulties, in a game like D&D where there's so much variance from table to table and party to party, you're just never going to get more than rough guidelines. And a DM is still going to need to know their players. They're going to need to know the characters. And they're going to have to make their own judgments. And at best, will be a tool that can help you make appropriate encounters, but it's simply never going to do the entire process with some math. It just can't be done. but simpler, more streamlined, where you don't need online tools to actually do the calculations, and that at least sounds like an improvement. He says they're working on magic items, and we're going to see that magic items that need attention are going to be revised. This is not unexpected news, but it's good news, since we know there are magic items that maybe should require attunement, but don't. Item rarity often doesn't operate as an accurate measure of item power, and some mechanics are just really clunky. So the public confirmation this is all getting significant attention is reassuring. But let's talk about the elephant in the room now. We've seen a handful of spells with revisions in the playtest, but what about all the other spells in the player's handbook that are clunky or have poor design or are wildly unbalanced? We now know for sure we will not be getting a public playtest featuring a redesign and rebalancing of these spells. And there has been a huge demand online for a public playtest featuring problematic spell fixes. We got a bit of a taste of that in Playtest 8 with the reimagining of the conjuration spells, and I was delighted to read them, and to playtest them, and to provide feedback for them. And these reimagined spells still need some refinement, not all of them. Some of them I think are good as is, but I was also really nervous the reimagined spells would receive low satisfaction scores, and they might just go back to the old versions. And I am relieved that didn't happen, but there are a whole lot more spells in the player's handbook that need to be addressed. And here's what Jeremy Crawford had to say. Now, this wasn't just about spells, but it certainly includes spells. And now we are deep, and have been for months, deep in our internal development. Not only developing the elements that have appeared in the UA series, but also the elements that haven't. He says, everything is getting very careful polish. So, a spell not appearing in a public playtest absolutely does not mean it's not being addressed, redesigned, or rebalanced. And I've been contemplating whether they should have released publicly their ideas for redesigned problematic spells, because, to be honest, I would love to read through that. But one thing I know about the D&D community as a whole, and I don't mean everyone, but I'm speaking in a general sense, we don't like nerfs. We don't like things that are too powerful being made less powerful. And realistically, with a good number of spells, that's what they're going to have to do. And as much as I would enjoy reading through those rebalanced spells personally, that comes nowhere close to the absolute dread I would have of a public survey on that rebalancing. And I have come to the conclusion that our best hope of a better balanced and better designed spell section in the player's handbook is for the designers to address each spell, case by case, and do what they have to do. Internally playtest them, refine them as necessary, and then publish them without public input. There is no way they're going to get everything 100% right. We know that. They know that. It's not even a reasonable expectation. But I don't believe that public input would be productive here. I think it would more likely be counterproductive. And although the public playtest process is complete for the player's handbook, and it's unclear if we'll get public playtest documents for the monster manual or anything beyond the Bastion system we already saw for the Dungeon Master's Guide, apparently there will be further announcements and events leading up to the new book publication. Not sure what they'll be, but I would love it if at some point we might get some previews, and I'm waiting as patiently as I can for a confirmed public release date. And I would love to hear what you think. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.